I think it's one of the top three films of all time. This, Sunrise, and The Wind, all silent. Absolutely marvelous films. They all go together.
I think it's a great, great piece of film, really wonderful. And Fay Ray is just a great star, and we're thrilled to have her here.
It's at events like these, when you see silent films, that you actually realise that maybe you don't even need sound. You are sucked into the drama, the passion, the whole experience with a live orchestra. It's absolutely unbeatable.
The rebuilt Sadler's Wells Theatre in London, the new home of the Channel 4 Silence. Since 1981, Channel 4 has supported the presentation of great silent films with live orchestra. To a new generation, a new form of entertainment. You have to be over 80 to have experienced it the first time round. This year, it is Erich von Stroheim's classic, The Wedding March, with Fay Ray. Erich von Stroheim was the most notorious director of the 1920s. In trouble with censors and producers, few of his films reached the screen intact, yet he was regarded as a genius. He exploited his past as an aristocratic Austrian cavalry officer. His films were scrupulously authentic. In fact, he was the son of a Jewish hatter and had never been more than a private in the army. Displaying a sophistication rare in American cinema, Stroheim suffused his films with nostalgia for his Viennese youth and contempt for the corruption and stupidity of the ruling class. The Wedding March was the last of his films to be released in America. It told an intimate story on an extravagant scale. Art director Richard Day built 36 sets, including the facade of St. Stephen's Cathedral, where a procession was filmed in Technicolor. The set for the high altar so impressed the cameraman, Hal Moore, that he got married in front of it. Stroheim searched everywhere for a girl to play Mitzi, and finally settled for a newcomer, Fay Ray, who'd so far played only in westerns and comedies. She was summoned to meet the great director.
That day, they let me see von Stroheim, and that I shall never forget. It's really was a powerful, wonderful moment of going into his office, which was hot because it was in summertime. And I sat in a chair opposite him. He looked wonderful. And he told me the story, or just told the story, partly to this woman who was with me, and partly to me. He paced back and forth and told the story. Well, it was wonderful to hear, wonderful to watch him, and watch his intensity. Beautiful. Then he drew closer to me and said, "Do you think you could play that part?" I said, "I know I could." And he said, "Well, goodbye, Mitzi." That was the name of the character. He held out his hand. I stood up to take his hand, but I couldn't because I was so emotionally charged that I just had to put my face in my hands and cry. And he said to that lady, "Oh, I can work with her."
The film catapulted Fay Ray to stardom, and no one who saw it ever forgot the love scene under the apple blossom.
Mitzi was a wonderful role. I thought that she was me. There was no difference between her and me. We were as one. The first scenes that we did together were early in the morning when the sun was practically coming up. And I do remember that he forgot his lines. Even though it was a silent film, he wanted the words to be said just as they were written. And I do remember very clearly that I knew the lines well enough by then that I could sort of cue him and make it easy for him to pick them up. Now he got pretty excited about that. "Oh, she's a pro," he said. "She knows what to do."
As in the story, Fay Ray felt close to Stroheim. Some people thought she fell for him.
Fell for him? Well, I felt, yes, I did, because I had a strong admiration for him, and he had a great power, and I looked up to that power.
Despite his reputation as a martinet, Stroheim treated her gently.
I feel as though he just sort of loved me into doing whatever he wanted. He gave me a good deal of support, strength. That's one of the wonderful things about this motion picture, as I have watched it. They have taken time to let feelings develop so that the audience can sense the feelings that the actors have. And that's a rare thing, rare, really. There was a scene in a brothel, and I was not supposed to go to the studio. And that went on for about a month, I believe. And I had to stay home, which was torment for me. I mean, I didn't need to be in the brothel or watch any of those things, but just to go, to be on the set, to be part of whatever was happening. I felt deprived and lonely, yes. And then, of course, when they stopped the picture, that was worse. Awful. Couldn't happen, shouldn't happen, but it happened.
Producer Pat Powers found Stroheim's expenditure spiraling out of control. He sold the film to Paramount, and Jesse Lasky brought shooting to a halt. Von Stroheim retreated to the cutting room and produced a rough cut of 11 hours. Eventually, he divided the story into 2 separate films. The second part, The Honeymoon, took the narrative up to the outbreak of the First World War. It was only shown in Europe and South America and was accidentally destroyed in the 1950s. The first part, The Wedding March, released 20 months after shooting ended, was admired by the critics, but the public was by then besotted with talkies.
I saw it, first of all, in a theater in Long Beach. And when I came away from that experience, I knew I'd seen something very special, very lovely. And I still think so.
When the film was shown with Carl Davis's score, Fay Wray's reaction was shared by the audience.
But what I found really wonderful was the fact that it's this soft focus, this pseudo-romantic veneer, is completely undercut by the cynical ending of von Stroheim, who's just really pragmatic and undercuts any illusion we might have that it's really all about love, which it isn't.
I think for Americans at that time, it must have been an incredible spectacle to see there's the Habsburg Empire and all of its glory and all of its detail, every medal, every epaulette there. And you don't get that in America, and it must have been an extraordinary sense. On the other hand, they're getting all this pageantry and glamour, and then they get this very dark, twisted, tragic tale. Now that is a wonderful thing to do to an audience, it seems to me, to treat them like that.
He is gorgeous. The shiny boots, the little fringe, the monocle, and best of all, the mouth movements.